Grace Bowers, welcome to Biscuits and Jam.
Thank you.
Where am I reaching you right now?
I am at my house right now in Nashville.
Okay. What part of Nashville are you in?
I live in Oak Hill, which is it's still technically in Nashville, but it just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that could be a good thing, right?
I would say it's a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of distance is good.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've been in Nashville for how long now?
3 years. I moved here from California with the rest of my family.
Which had to be a pretty big move.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crossing the country and big kind of cultural change. And you're in the South now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love California, and I'll probably end up moving back there at some point in my life. I also hated it when we first moved out here. For like 3 months, I was so mad at my parents for making us move. But now that I've settled in a bit and found the musical community out here, like I love it. And it's really cool. There's the good with the bad, but yeah, it's definitely very different in a lot of ways.
Well, tell me a little bit about where you grew up in Northern California. Tell me about the house where you grew up and what your folks do for a living.
Yeah, well, I don't come from a musical family. Like on my mom and my dad's side, there is not a single person who plays an instrument. So the fact that I picked up guitar was kind of like just random because I thought it looked cool when I was 9 years old. So pretty shallow reason for picking up a guitar, but I think it worked out in the end. But yeah, I grew up in a small town about 45 minutes from San Francisco. And again, absolutely no musical community there whatsoever. Like we didn't even have restaurants with live music in it. It wasn't really a thing. And
Yeah.
I was never, growing up, I was never, we had music on like in the car and stuff, but I was never really exposed to like new things and different kinds of music. So that was something that I really had to discover for myself.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like you really found it, a lot of it during the pandemic. I mean, that's when you really started playing every day, right? And probably, experimenting a lot and listening to a lot of things.
I would say, I've been playing since I was 9, and it was always kind of just like a hobby for me, and I didn't really take it too seriously. Like my mom had to force me to go take guitar lessons every week and that kind of stuff. But there was one day, it was like when COVID was just starting and everything had just gotten all shut down. I was sitting in my mom's car, like flipping through radio stations, and B.B. King comes on playing Sweet Little Angel off of his very first album, I think. It was either his first or third, I can't remember. But he starts that song with like 5 notes, and they like struck me in such a way because I had never heard anything like that before. So that I would say is like really the moment that I found a passion for it, because I had never heard that before. I didn't even know you could do that with a guitar.
Wow. That's amazing. And BB King of all things. I mean, he's been gone a long time now. But it was that kind of jumped out of the radio at you. Wow. Well, Grace, congrats on the new album. It's called Wine on Venus, which is great. I love the name. And it's got some great songs and guitar playing on it. And it's really got a lot of soul in it for someone who's just 18 years old. Tell me about some of the reaction that you've heard to it, just kind of playing it for people. Could be friends and family or, some of your fans.
Yeah, well, I think, since I do have quite a presence online, and I feel like sometimes I get kind of grouped in with a lot of blues rock people, and, that's all cool and that's fine, but that's not the kind of music I make, nor is it the music I want to make. So I think by putting this album out, that was definitely a lot more influenced by funk and soul rather than blues and rock. There still is that influence there, but it's just not as prominent as some people would think. I think it was a bit of a surprise because it's something, I don't know, maybe a bit different than what's what a lot of like guitar players are putting out right now. And it's not a guitar record either. It's because I hate that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
as a guitar player, hate guitar music. I cannot
No, you
listen to it.
don't.
I mean, if it's like I think it's if it's just guitar and stuff, if it's like instrumental or something, I think it's boring, and that's just my opinion. But I think it's boring. So when I was writing this record, I was like very adamant. I want these to be songs. I want them to get stuck in people's heads, and I want them to be catchy. And so that was what was in my mind while writing it, and I think that comes out in those songs a lot.
Well, it definitely does. And one of the things I love about this album is where it came from in terms of the inspiration for it. And I read somewhere that it was inspired by your grandmother.
Yeah, the name Wine on Venus came from her.
Tell me a little bit about her.
Well, she passed away maybe over a year ago now at the ripe old age of 100.
Wow.
So yeah, and she's a very unique woman. She said some very off the cuff things in her older age, but she used to tell people that before she died, or when she dies, she'll be drinking wine on Venus because it's the brightest star. And that kind of like, I just kind of held on to that because that's such a cool phrase. And it was something that she like repeated. It wasn't just like her being a bit crazy. It was like she really believed that somehow. And so when she passed, we went back home to California for Christmas, and it was like the first time we had the whole family there at the dinner table, and we were missing her because, you know, she wasn't there. So we were all kind of like talking about her a bit, and that story got brought up, and I kind of like hung on to that. And when we came back to Nashville, I knew I wanted to write a song about it. So I sat down with Ben Chapman and Meg McCree, and that song just kind of like flowed out of us in like 2 hours. It was amazing.
What was her name?
Her name was Elizabeth, which is actually my middle name.
And did y'all have a close relationship?
Yeah, we were pretty close. I never really got to see her that often, but when I did, like, it was a time I really cherished.
Yeah. And she was on your mom's side or your dad's side?
Mom's side.
Grace, was she able to see what you could do with a guitar and appreciate some of the success that you've had?
No, not really. The last time I ever saw her, I played guitar for her for the first time. And I wasn't very good, so not really.
Well, she's watching you now from somewhere.
I like to think so.
Yeah. Grace, I've talked to a lot of people on this show about moving to Nashville. It's a little bit of a theme, you know. It's definitely a place that if you're interested in the music business, you know, it's going to draw you in. And so many people have moved there. I've talked to Darius Rucker and Keb Mo and Lainey Wilson, Madeline Edwards, a lot of people you've probably come across. But I don't think any of them moved there as young as you did. Tell me a little bit about your journey there. I mean, your folks, you know, make this decision and you make this decision and you're moving across the country at, I guess you were 15. You know, what was that like for you to just show up in that town that you hadn't ever really spent a lot of time in? Or maybe you'd spent a little bit of time there, but, you know, it just, it had to be a pretty dramatic change. And tell me about, like, what was the trip like for you?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, it was hard for me. We moved when I think I was 14, turning 15. So pretty young. That I was also going into my freshman year. So to like kind of uproot my whole life and then go to a high school and start high school in a new state, in a new house, not knowing anyone, is pretty hard, I think, for anyone, not just for me. Like, that sucks. So there was a lot of resentment at first, for sure, and I was miserable. I was miserable until I started playing. People would ask me to come and sit in with their bands, like at little clubs. And that's when I, you know, kind of found this community that lifted me up. And that's when I started to love Nashville. But yeah, at first it was definitely like a pretty big struggle, and it was also like kind of an off the cuff move. We visited and then sold our house 6 weeks later. So
Wow.
it was a very
Super fast.
yeah, like just spur of the moment decision. Like, let's get the hell out of California. There's better schools out here because I also have two little brothers. So it wasn't even like a move for music. It just so happened that, you know, it's kind of the best place to be for music. But it wasn't like 100% intentional.
Do you feel like the community has really embraced you? I mean, and your family, you know, moving into the city, it can be tough. It can be a tough place for people. But it seems like you've adapted pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, absolutely. And also, like, I was a completely different person versus now. Like, when we first moved here, I was super duper shy. I was pretty awkward. You know, I was nervous about everything. Because I had never been around a community that was like, I never had a reason to be confident in anything until, you know, I started getting up on stage and people would, again, just like lift me up. And that really helped me like find myself and this confidence. Like, guitar helped me find my confidence. I don't know what kind of person I would be if I hadn't gone through any of that. So I would say like Nashville has completely changed me as a person, and for the better, for sure.
I don't know how much you know about Southern living, but you know, we've been producing a magazine here for a long time, going on 60 years, and a lot of what we talk about is food. And I'm curious about what the change in the food was like for you. And tell me about your take on Southern food now that you're living in Nashville.
Hot take. I don't think Nashville is a good city for food at all. Like, not in the slightest. People always say it is, and it's not. I also don't like hot chicken, so this is not a good place to be. That is like, I miss California food so much. You know what I miss a lot that we don't have out here?
What's that?
Is frozen yogurt. There's not a single frozen yogurt place in Nashville. And no one cares about that. But I do. I miss it.
Well, there could be an opportunity there, Grace.
If I had the time and money, I would absolutely open a frozen yogurt store in Nashville.
Well, maybe somebody out there will hear this and, you know, be paying attention.
Please.
So what about cooking at home? I mean, who's the cook in your family?
My mom. I can't cook anything. I can make spaghetti and eggs, and that's about it.
What's her specialty?
She is good at making chili.
Okay.
Which is good in the winter out here because it's so cold.
Yeah, it sure is. Always a good idea. Well, Grace, you know, you've been playing with some incredible people all over the country, and a lot of whom I'm guessing you've met in Nashville, but, you know, you've played with Lainey Wilson, Dolly Parton, Tyler Childers, so many great artists. Tell me about someone who you've really kind of connected with, and who has influenced you in some way.
I feel like everyone, like big name or not, that has let me sit in with them or play a show for them has influenced me in one way or another. Like, especially with Dolly, getting to work with Dolly. I don't know how old she is, but that lady was, and that's not to be mean, but that lady she was working all day, and that's not easy. And she was in heels the whole time too, which is just like another level. And I just, like, I have so much, after seeing her do what she does, I have so much respect for how hardworking of a woman she is. It was like inspiring for me. Like, I thought it was a long day and I only had to play like 2 songs. She's doing the whole show, and, you know, she's didn't even seem tired. So that was definitely like, it was cool to see and very inspiring.
Yeah. And she's been doing it since she was younger than you.
Yeah. Which is even crazier.
Yeah. Grace, there are so many celebrated male guitarists out there. There are a lot of them. There are fewer female guitar players who are as well known, although there's so many good ones out there, and I've talked to some of them on this show. But who are some of the female guitar players that you've followed or been inspired by?
There's a lot. Nancy Wilson for sure. She's always been. We've never actually met, which is crazy, but she's always been just a huge supporter of me and everything I do, which is amazing coming from someone like her, who I again have so much respect for, and someone who's been through the same things that I'm going through right now. So that's really cool to know that I have her support. And then like obviously Joan Jett is another one. She was the first female guitar player I ever saw when I was little, and that was cool because I hadn't seen anyone play guitar that wasn't a dude. So huge respect for her as well. Susan Tedeschi is awesome. And then like other like older ones like Sister Rosetta Tharpe have been a big influence. Especially she's another SG player. There's so many, and I'm like, of course, I'm blanking on like every single one right now, but there's three for you.
Well, I've talked to Lark and Poe. I talked to them on this show, and
They're great.
They're incredibly
Yeah,
talented.
they're amazing.
And, yeah, so many. And I would think that given your following, you're probably inspiring a lot of young guitar players yourself. Do you ever hear from them?
Yeah, actually, like that's my favorite thing is when someone messages me like, I bought an SG because of you, or I started playing guitar because I was watching your videos. Like those are my favorite messages to get. There was one time I was at the Gibson Garage, which is downtown Nashville, and there was a girl there buying an SG, like literally holding an SG about to buy it. And she recognized me and was like, "Oh my God, I'm buying this guitar because you play it."
Oh,
And
that's
that was
great.
just like the best thing you could hear.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Grace, you've had some really big moments this year, and too many to count. But one that I wanted to mention was your 18th birthday. You played at the Grand Ole Opry, which is a heck of a way to ring in 18. Tell me what it meant to you to be on that particular stage, and what was that night like for you?
Well, the Opry has always been like top of my bucket list ever since moving to Nashville, because also one of the first shows I ever saw when we moved here was at the Grand Ole Opry. It was Old Crow Medicine show with Keb Mo, which amazing combo. So ever since seeing that show, it's been a goal of mine to one day play the Opry, and not for someone else. I wanted to do it under my name. And so I got the news, like John Osborne, and then my family surprised me when they told me. And they let me bring in my band too, which was really, the Opry band they're legends, but yeah, I was glad I got to do it with my band just because there's such a connection there. So that was also another really cool aspect of the night, was getting to have all of them up there with me. And then just like stepping into that circle for the first time at soundcheck and thinking of like all the people before me who have also stepped into that circle for the first time was just like such a cool moment.
Well, I suspect it's not the last time you're going to be playing there.
I hope not.
Well, let's talk about your new album for a second, Grace. It's called Wine on Venus. There are a lot of elements to it that are kind of a throwback. I mean, you've got this, kind of retro 60s cover, which is great. And you've got a cover in there of Dance to the Music, which was Sly and the Family Stone, right?
Yeah.
What is it about that song and that era that kind of speaks to you?
That song was actually not supposed to be on there. We had another song that was called Let It Be Done. We've played it live like 5 times, and it never really like did anything for the crowd, just like me being on stage and watching their reactions. I feel like there wasn't I don't know, there's just something about the song that wasn't connecting with people, and it didn't really go anywhere. So we were in the studio, and both me and John both agreed, like, yeah, we should probably cut this song. So then I was like, oh crap, well, I don't have another song prepared that we can record. Like, this is like in the studio recording it. So like, well, what about a cover? And I was obsessed with Sly, still am obsessed with Sly and the Family Stone. So I suggested one of their songs, and we sat down to do Everyday People. And listening to it, it's a great song. It's an amazing song. But it's kind of boring. It doesn't do anything, and it's already been covered before. So then we were like, well, let's do something different and maybe a bit more fun. So we settled on that song, which I actually think was better in the long run, because our sound was very much influenced by Sly and the Family Stone. So I think it was cool throwing in a cover.
Well, it's a great cover. And I'm so glad you did that one. It is fun. It's upbeat.
Yeah.
You can't hear it and not want to move a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that, crowds are going to love that one, and great choice.
Yeah. Thank you.
I want to ask you about John Osborne. He's been on this podcast, and, this is John Osborne with the Brothers Osborne. He produced the album. And great guy, incredibly talented. How has he helped you navigate the music world and navigate this whole process?
I can't imagine doing this without John. I mean, first of all, like, he understood the sound I wanted and just like nailed it so perfectly. And just being in the studio with him and working with him, and hearing the ideas that he brought to the table, even if I was like, I don't know about that. That seems kind of weird. He was like, just trust me. And then it ended up being great. Like, we had so many moments like that where his instinct was just like, it was just spot on. So it was awesome having him produce it. And then, like, even above all that, like, I can ask, like, if I have a question about something, I'll ask John about it, just because, he's been through the same thing and he knows what's up. So I'm definitely very appreciative of him.
Well, it seems like a great match, and he's also a tremendous guitar player.
Yeah.
So it seems like y'all would have connected on that level as well.
Yeah.
There's another great song on the album called "Tell Me Why You Do That," and one of the co-writers on the song was John, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talk to me about how that one came together.
That song, actually, the chorus of that song was written by Ben and Meg in the same session we wrote Wine on Venus.
Oh.
And so after we had finished writing Wine on Venus, Ben had his guitar and he was kind of just jamming on this E chord. And then they both start singing, "Tell Me Why You Do That." And there weren't really any other words after that. It was just like, "Tell me why you do that." But I thought it was cool. So I hang on to that little chorus idea and I take it into John and Lucy Silva's. And then we write verses to it and make it into a song. But that one's definitely like very heavily funkadelic inspired. It's more definitely more on the funk side of things, which I like. And yeah, that's just like a fun song. It's not really about like a singular person. It's kind of just a random fun song.
Well, it works on that level, that's for sure. And it seems to be one that people are definitely responding to.
Yeah.
So your band is called the Hodge Podge, which I love. Was that your idea? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's called the Hodge Podge because for a while I would get booked on shows and I didn't have a band. So I would have to group together like a bunch of musicians that I knew and just have them like be my band for a night, and then that was it. It was never anything permanent. So I, like, as a joke, called it, "Oh, it's a hodgepodge." And then the more and more I played around, the more and more, I found like the winning combination of people. And it's since then, like, changed over time too. But I would say now it's like definitely more of a like in place band, and it's not just session players or hired guns anymore, which is great because it's an actual band, and we're all traveling and touring together, which I love, and making music. So yeah, it's not really a hodgepodge anymore, but I'm gonna keep the name.
Well, it works, and yeah, it's a great name for a group. And if you ever do make changes, then it'll still work, you know. So I want to ask you about the your partner and the lead singer, kind of on the album, which is a woman named Esther or Essie. She goes by
AC.
AC,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to help me pronounce her last name.
I don't know if I'm gonna say it right either. It's Okai Tete, I think, but she just goes by AC now.
AC.
So yeah, it's easier.
So tell me about your partnership with AC and what it's like performing together.
Yeah, well, me and her wrote a good almost like all of the songs together on that are on the album. And a lot of them were written, like late nights sitting on my bedroom floor just jamming. And so that like we have a really great way of songwriting together because whereas I struggle on like the melody side is where she is the best at that, and then I'll write the music and then we both kind of collaborate on the lyrics. So it's a good like kind of workflow we've gotten into with writing, which is cool. It's also like I love having her out on the road with us. Like she's a great friend, like beyond just an amazing musician. So yeah, she's been great.
Did y'all meet in Nashville?
Yeah, she was actually one of the very first people I met when we moved here because, as I said before, I had no friends when we moved out here. So during the summer, my mom made me do a rock band summer camp. And it just so happened to be at the high school she went to. So we met there and kind of stayed in touch.
Well, you guys have a great connection and are making some great music together. And I love the way that seeing you perform live. I mean, I haven't seen you actually perform live, but seeing some of your performances and the way that, you guys kind of trade back and forth with her vocals and your guitar playing, it's seems you can read each other's minds up there.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Grace, I've seen that you're involved a little bit with an organization called Music Cares, which is kind of all about helping the people behind the music with things like mental health and other kinds of health services. Why did that organization strike a chord with you?
Well, I'm very outspoken about like things I believe in, and the first time I ever like supported them was for a charity show I did called Grace Bowers and Friends 2 years ago. And it was in response to the Covenant shooting because that was like 20 minutes away from me. And so that was it was in partnership with Music Cares for gun violence. And Nashville like showed out in such a huge way that I was like, wow, this is something that not only I care about, like other people care about it too. And so like from there, I was like just wanting to speak out about everything after that. Whether it made people mad or not. And also, like, I personally know, like, so many people, especially being in Nashville, that Music Cares has helped, like, whether that be therapy or rehab, mental health services. There's so many things that they do for musicians that they might otherwise not be able to afford, or just, like, certain circumstances, like, they can't get those services for whatever reason. Like, Music Cares is there to help, and that's something that I really believe in. So I love supporting them.
Well, it's a great organization, and I hope you keep working with them down the road. Well, Grace, I just have one more question for you. I know you miss California, and it sounds like you may be heading back there someday. But what are some of the things that you love most about living in the South?
I like having 4 seasons. A lot of people complain about the weather, but in California, it's like 70 degrees all the time, and the trees never change. I remember our first fall out here because we live behind a bunch of woods, and I was just amazed that trees could look like I'd only seen that happen in movies before. I'd never seen it in person, like trees like that. So it's beautiful down here, and I love that. And then again, like you have 4 seasons. It gets cold in the winter, gets hot in the summer. I like that. And then obviously just the most incredible music community you could ever ask for. So there's a lot of things to love about Nashville for sure.
I hope you'll stick around for a while. And I just got to say congrats on the album and the tour and everything you're doing, and just hope you keep on rocking.
Thank you.
And Grace Bowers, thanks so much for being on Biscuits and Jam.
Thank you. I appreciate it.